Hello little friends, welcome back to our channel, Wisdom for Kids. I'm so happy you're here again today. Last time, we saw how Abram bravely rescued his nephew Lot from trouble. After the battle, Abram gave thanks to God and refused to take riches from the king of Sodom. He showed that he trusted God to take care of him, not people. But even though God had blessed Abram, there was still one big thing missing from his life. Abram and his wife Sarai still had no children. God had promised to make Abram into a great nation, but how would that happen without a son? Today's story is about a very special conversation between God and Abram. It's about promises, stars, and a very deep kind of trust. Today's story is called God's Covenant with Abram, from Genesis chapter 15. Let's begin. Episode 13, God's Covenant with Abram, Genesis chapter 15. After the battle, Abram was quiet. He had won the fight and given all the credit to God. But still, he had questions in his heart. Would God really keep his promise? Would Abram ever have a child of his own? Then something amazing happened. Genesis 15:1 says, After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. God was reminding Abram, I will protect you, and I will give you more than riches. I will give you myself. But Abram shared what he was feeling. He said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? You have given me no children, so a servant in my house will be my heir. Genesis 15:2-3. Abram wasn't being rude, he was just being honest. He believed God, but he didn't understand how the promise would come true. God answered gently. In Genesis 15:4, God said, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. Then God took Abram outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars if you can count them. And he said, So shall your offspring be. Genesis 15:5. Can you imagine that? Abram looked up at the night sky. He saw thousands and thousands of shining stars. God said, That's how many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren you will have, more than you can count. And then comes one of the most important verses in the whole Bible. Genesis 15:6 says, Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. That means God saw Abram's trust and called it good. Abram was made right with God, not because he did something big or perfect, but because he believed what God said. Faith is powerful. Then God reminded Abram of something else. He said, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur to give you this land. Genesis 15:7. And Abram asked, How can I know that I will gain possession of it? Genesis 15:8. God didn't get upset at Abram's question. Instead, he made something called a covenant. In those days, a covenant was a serious promise between two people. They would take animals, cut them in half, and lay the pieces opposite each other. Then both people would walk between them to show they were making a promise that could not be broken. So God told Abram to prepare the animals, a cow, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a pigeon. Genesis 15:9-10. Abram prepared everything. Then he waited. The sun went down. Darkness fell, and a deep, peaceful sleep came over Abram. In the dream, God spoke. He told Abram that his family would grow into a great nation. but not right away. They would one day live in a foreign land and be treated badly, but God would bring them out with many riches. Genesis 15, 13, 14. Then something amazing happened. Genesis 15:17 says, "When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces." God was making the promise himself. Abram didn't have to walk through the animals, God did. God was saying, "This promise depends on me, not on you. I will do it. You can trust me." On that day, God made a covenant with Abram. Genesis 15:18. God's plan was moving forward. The stars, the land, the future, it was all in his hands. And Abram believed. Today, we learned that even when we have questions, we can trust God. Abram was honest with God. He asked, "How?" And God answered with a promise and with stars in the sky. Faith means believing what God says even before it happens. And when we believe, God is pleased. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to hold on to God's words, because He always keeps His promises. So next time you see stars shining above, remember, God made a promise to Abram. And He's made promises to you too. He promises to love you, to never leave you, and to finish the good work He started in your life. See you next time, friends. In our next episode, Abram and Sarai will try to make God's promise happen in their own way, but it leads to trouble. What happens when we try to run ahead of God? Find out next time. Good night and sleep tight.